Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. My name is Vanessa with ITS Communications, and today we are going to be talking about SQL and how you can communicate with databases using this service. With me today, we have Dina Damskaya, who works with our Educational Technologies group in our Student Information Services team. We also have a couple other names you might see in the chat as co-hosts. Roger Espiritu and Cynthia Morel. They're also part of our educational technologies team, and you may or may not see them in the chat, but I just wanted to introduce you to them so you know who they were. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that I am recording today's session. So if you need to go back and review anything or share it with some colleagues who may not have been able to attend today, I'll be sending you a follow-up email later today with a link to that recording, as well as any other resources we might mention today. And I do have everyone on mute as we are expecting quite a few people to log in, and I just want to prevent any background noise. But if you have a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to come off mic to ask your question. So without further ado, I am going to hand it off to Dina. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Vanessa, and welcome to our second session about how to communicate with databases using SQL. I hope I can be heard. Okay? Yes, Vanessa?
Yes. Yes, you sound good.
Thank you. So during today's session, after a brief introduction, I will cover the benefits and, of course, the risks and how we can use it to our advantage. I'll briefly cover how do we get started and show it's all connected, how we can use other resources. And we'll take a closer look at our SQL, and I'll hope to convince you that it's all worth it with a little bit of effort. And if there's still any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And so every business at this day and age collects data for research for the business implement to take their weaker sides into stronger sides, and that's where the SQL comes in. SQL is a programming language that helps us to communicate with databases that actually is a structure that holds our data. We all use Excel or Access or any other applications to manipulate the data, but these have very limited capacity, unlike databases, which can hold very large quantities of data. And like a business, for example, let's say school or warehouse, there is a lot of information flowing in, and Excel simply cannot hold that much, let alone it's not easy to view the full picture and the reporting with the macros. So the databases is the way to go, and SQL helps us actually to see what's inside. And in addition, the integration is easy. The SQL server can be installed on almost any platform like the desktop or laptop, even a Mac OS system with a docking, but it's still possible to install SQL Server on Mac operating systems. And it's not very complex. Even person who has no prior knowledge of programming or little still can easily master this, and it can be beneficial in the long run. In addition to everything above, SQL has an open source, which means it's free. You don't have to spend a lot to use this wonderful tool, and it's highly interactive. It is actually a treasure chest once you install it. And the beauty of it that any or almost all applications like Microsoft Access or Excel or Power BI applications can all connect to database. So you don't even have to learn in complexity all the SQL. The front end will give you access to the data. And to install this, these tools are free. The Microsoft site, you just need the SQL Server itself, the Management Studio, which will help you write the SQL, and the database itself where the data will be stored. All these links will be provided later. Just follow the instructions and it's easy to install. Let's take a closer look. Once you install, you get the standard objects collection, which will help not only to store the data, to keep the data secure, not only from outside sources, but also from internally, like human error, somebody accidentally deleted a table. That's where all these objects come in. And these four databases, they always come as a default. These databases have their own function to keep our data clean and safe, and the ease of access. Plus, as the data collection grows, the resources also are needed, and this is to preserve all the resources and have the business running successfully. And of course, after all the system resources, we can create our own databases with the tables that we need to store our data. Another beautiful thing is, instead of creating the entry one by one, especially if we have a big business, let's say we have a school to run. There are a lot of students every year, they come and go, which student stays a year, so there is a lot of data to control. And instead of entering one by one students, the Microsoft SQL offers us a lot of tools, interactive tools, where you can easily import or export, for that matter, any Excel sheet into or out of the SQL for the review. So once we established all this, how we get data, let's take a look at our table. So a table is an entity. A relational database allows you to have to control data for ease of access, to exclude the redundancy, and to make sure the reports that we run on this data are accurate. So we need to identify the fields for each of the tables. So let's say for the school that we have to run, we have students. Students have the ID, students have the first name, the last name. But it's not enough. Students also take courses. So we'll create another table just for courses, but later we need to have these tables to meet, because some students take some courses and the courses are taken by multiple students. And that's all our fields. We determine the data types, we determine kinds of fields, we determine the sizes that allowed. And that's all controlled by the SQL server that allows you to keep it all in one place, which means each table has the keys, the primary keys and the foreign keys. Primary key, it's, let's say, for the student table, it's going to be the student ID. And for the course table, it's going to be course ID. Each of these tables has primary keys of their own entity, but when they meet, these keys become foreign keys in the third table. So we easily can identify the student. We know that exactly this student took exactly these courses. And once you enter all this data, the table will look something like this, all codes, and absolutely not understandable for a person who doesn't know what we're looking at. But we can always manipulate this data with store procedure the SQL Server offers, or views, or any other means that SQL Server offers. But on top of this, data integrity controls make sure that our data is always safe, clean, and accurate. And there are four important controls that I would like to mention. The data definition language, that's the language that defines our tables, how we create them, how we can drop, rename, and the data manipulation language helps us to manipulate the data. We select data from the tables, we update this data again and insert or delete. The data control language helps us to control who has access to this table and either grant more access or revoke, depending on what we want other users to do with our data. And one of the more important, the transaction control language, that's the beauty of the SQL that allows you to modify your data in batches. Let's say you have 10,000 of rows and you need to update just 1,000 rows instead of one by one. These controls allow you to make sure if the error occurred for any reason, data is either rolled back or committed to make sure the data integrity is preserved. And now let's take a look exactly how do we want to communicate with our tables. So when we collect data, we want to take a look at it. And like I mentioned, it is simple English language. So you are telling SQL to select what, select the field, select the data that we want to look at. And then we can identify the tables to look from. Let's say we want to select the students from the student table. And another beautiful thing, that's where these two tables meet. The students and the courses, for example. I know this is different tables, but we can have as many databases and tables and that we like. And we can, of course, narrow down our results by including the where clause, where the course, let's say, equals the biology or not equals biology. We can use the aggregate functions to have only the summary, depending on what we're looking for, and of course, sorting. We can sort by ascending order, descending order, whichever meets our needs. In addition to all of these, SQL Server offers the wildcards. Wildcards help us to avoid using the exact writing of, let's say, I want to see the courses, the introduction to biology. It's too much to write. Instead, we can use the wildcards to say like, and these signs will help SQL including the string that contains only these words. Or we can use the sum, the count, the minimum or maximum. What's the minimum grade? What's the maximum student count? We can use operators, arithmetical as well as logical. We can do any sort of operation. And of course, the built-in functions that can help us manipulate data. Let's say we inserted data with all caps. We can convert the all caps into regular case for capital and then or lowercase. So any functions. The beautiful thing is you can create your own functions. Whatever you need to do, these functions can be used anywhere you need it. But let's take a closer look. Once we know already how to write our sentences, we are selecting from a specific table. Notice this is an asterisk, but it's also called the wildcard because one table in SQL can hold 1024 columns maximum. We need these columns, but we don't always want to look at them. So this wildcard we can use better. It's called an explicit select. We can choose only specific fields we want to use. And also notice this letter C is an alias. Typing a full name sometimes creates a human error. And then in the all noodles of code, you will be looking why SQL doesn't recognize the table. But once you simply create an alias and refer to it, you don't have to type table name every time. because alias is easily to remember. And now we came to the joins. That's where we connect more than one table, because sometimes we can have hundreds of tables that are all relevant and we want to meet them. And there are five types of join that SQL offers: the inner join, the left join, the right join, the full join, and the join. This is the newest addition to the SQL family. It's several years old. But all of these joins serves the purpose depending on what data you are looking to have the report. But once we know all the how to compose a sentence, the level up from this, creating views are virtual tables. Once you create a view, first of all, you don't have to rewrite anymore the script if the reports created once and for all, they do reflect the freshest data. Once data comes in, goes out, gets updated, the views not only helpful to save you work from every time creating the script, but also data cannot be updated with views. So if views are lying at the base of the report, that means data is safe no matter what happens. And views also contain the joins. Like I mentioned before, the joins are very helpful to connect more than one table. And that's where it comes very useful. Once we create the views, this is actually from the other side. This is the report that runs based on that view. Every time you need to look up something like how many students are graduating next month, how many students passed or failed the specific course, how many students are within a specific course, creating the view with the report. This one is actually SSRS report builder that directly connects to database, but there are other means to have run the reports. Also note that data doesn't always have to be the same, because sometimes data is not applicable, and it's the reports are very flexible to show there is data or there isn't data, which brings us to very important marker in the developers world is a null. Null is not a value, it's a marker. It's like multiplication by zero. It happens when there is no data, but it's necessary to have it. One of the important things also that SQL offers, it also understands the regular Windows command shell programming. If you embed it into a store procedure, the files from outside can be brought in as well as taken out with regular shell programming. As we can see, we can put a file into a specific directory, and then SQL allows us to schedule the job. This job will run on frequency that you set, and the files can just come in and go as necessary. Once we keep collecting our data grows, we keep making our views and store procedures more and more complex, and the resources are taken. One of the great things that SQL offers is a query optimization. This here can show you how much time and resources taken with each join, with each select statement, the where clause. And that gives you an idea how to, because even though the SQL offers similar commands, they do different things to take in the resources. And the more users use the application, the more resources are taken. But let's say if we concurrently want several users do the same thing, the reports may even freeze That's where this optimization comes in to let work multiple users with the same tables without compromising the server performance. Another great thing are triggers. Sometimes they may be risky if they are not tested properly, but if properly configured, triggers can play an excellent role to the data maintenance. They are attached directly to a table and they're sitting there until a specific event happens. Let's say we have a trigger for the student, for example, on insert, and we want for specific students on insert assign a specific grade. That's where the triggers come in. Instead of someone else going into each student and assign that specific value, which also prone to a human error, or we can miss a student, the trigger will always accurately fire as soon as a specific event happens. And once you put it all together, you can enjoy the wonderful live reports that you created that help benefit your business to prosper even more. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Dina. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I know there are a few people who came in a little later, so feel free to also hit the raise hand button in your Zoom toolbar if you'd like to come off the mic as well. I think what is the best online source for looking up SQL commands?
Microsoft has a very great database, but there's also Wise Owl. Wise Owl, it's an online video resources that have from the beginning to the very complex lessons, and they broken down in small pieces and very, very easy to understand.
I'll be sure to add those two resources in the follow-up email as well. I'm just taking notes while you're answering these questions, Dina. And you said it was wiseowl.com?
Uh, Not sure.com, but if you do search in Google Wise Owl, they have the owl in their video, and they provide specifically the SQL courses
Okay,
for
perfect.
free. They're free.
Perfect. I'll definitely look that up and share it. Can we access this presentation somewhere? Yes, Bilal. I will forward a copy of this presentation to everyone in a follow-up email. So you should be getting it sometime after the session is over. Another question, are there good resources for translating commands from different languages, for example, MATLAB or Python into SQL?
I'm sorry, I don't know any.
Um, our data, I would recommend, I think that was Andrew. I can also look into whether we have any LinkedIn Learning or Skillsoft courses. There may be some. Oh, and Aparna just mentioned LinkedIn has many SQL beginner courses. Perfect. We're on the same wavelength. I'll look at some resources that might be available in those two resource sites. They are free for anybody at Weill Cornell. So they are very, very good resources that you can access at any point. Another question is, our data is mainly data core. It's PHI. I'm trying to figure out how I can use SQL in data core. Do you have any advice, Dina, about where Leah might be able to start?
I'm sorry, no, but I would like to meet. We can discuss. Maybe we can find the solution together.
Perfect. Leah, I will make sure that you are connected to Dina after this session. Um, we have NYC, I hope I say this right, Cogito SQL databases among the Workbench reports in Epic. Can we create a slicer dicer report from these SQL databases?
That's me thinking. I would like to say yes, but I still would like to look at it. It all probably depends on the setup and the collation. There are many factors. but I don't truly know.
Just checking if there are any other questions coming in. We'll give it a minute. I'm actually going to type in the chat uh, our LinkedIn Learning and then wm.skillport.com. And I think Juliet Brocky's on here, who's part of our training team. So if I get that Skillport link wrong, please correct me. I hope that's the right one. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I know the LinkedIn Learning one is correct. And that's where you can look up resources about SQL or just coding in general. And there's the Wise Owl link that somebody found. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to put that in our follow-up email. And you mentioned Wise Owl was free, right, Dina?
Yes, it is, and it is UK based. Yes, so
Ah,
this is the
okay.
correct.
I did get the Skillport email wrong. I think I had the old one. I'm going to put in the new one here. Thank you, Pauline. Oh, Juliet put in there. Thank you. Wild.percipio.com is the Skillsoft resource. And for both LinkedIn Learning and Skillsoft, you just have to sign in with your Seaweed and password, and you'll be taken to your free courses. I know with LinkedIn, we sometimes get emails to us saying, "Oh, I tried to log into LinkedIn, and it's saying that I have to pay." You might be logged into your personal LinkedIn account. You definitely want to make sure you log out and then sign back in with your Weill Cornell email, and then it will take you in to all the free courses that you could probably ever watch. Oh, a good suggestion from Julie, who's part of our research informatics team. This is in reference to Andrew's question about whether there are good resources for translating commands from different languages. Julie's recommending to try Microsoft Copilot. That is a really good resource. I use it to look up different things like Excel formulas and things like that. You can access Copilot from your O365 account. So if you're probably familiar with that, o365.wild.cornell.edu, and then just search for Copilot in the search bar, and you'll be taken to the enterprise version of Copilot, which is the protected version. Highly recommend using that one as opposed to just going to uh, the the business Copilot page. Thanks, Julie. That's a good piece of advice. Are there any other questions for Dina or Dina/Roger? Anything else you want to add about SQL before we wrap up?
This Roger, the only thing that I probably could suggest is if you feel like you have more advanced questions, then you could just simply reach out to us, Dina, myself, Cynthia, or ETG team, and we would also like to see what you're doing, what you're working with, how your system works, and how SQL actually can sort of be useful in your business projects or your work. Just want to plug that one.
Awesome. I'll add when I send the follow-up email, Dina and Roger will be copied. So feel free to, if you've got a question after you receive the email, just hit reply. We'll all be on there and you can ask your questions and we can hopefully help you out. Are there any other questions or anyone who wants to maybe come off the mic and talk about a specific use case scenario that they might be having? It looks like we've gotten through the questions. I am going to, Dina, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up or
No, just thanks everyone for taking your time to come to our session.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, I'll be sending follow-up details in an email to everyone as well as this recording. And again, if you have any questions after this that you've thought of, please feel free to reach out and we'll answer your question. Oh, one quick one from Susan. Can any department get access to SQL, Dina?
They can install their own SQL with the links that we provided.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So, Susan, I'll make sure that those links are part of the email and you're free to download it and try it out, and you should be able to access it and play around with it as you'd like.
And I'll be happy to help with the installation. If you encounter any issues, so please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, and those installation instructions were in the PowerPoint, so we'll send you all those links. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of the day.